I'm very fond of the novel Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury, as well as Ray Bradbury as an author in general. You read it as part of a school curriculum, but it ends up becoming one of your most memorable reading experiences of all time, totally separate from the inane, horrid mundanity of it being part of a school curriculum, which I have mixed feelings about in any text case. I think Bradbury had interesting opinions on this, as it were, as also he seemed indifferent to the fact that it was a prescribed text in schools. Fahrenheit 451, that is. The Truffaut film has had something of a polarized reception over time. I think those who were very fond of the novel and literature seem to dismiss it. Truffaut's fans seem to hold it in some disdain. Perhaps it's like the David Lynch's Dune of Truffaut's films. Although I actually have a quite immense appreciation for this film. I've had since I first viewed it, and watching it now, Truffaut really was a fantastic choice to direct this film, at least visually. I mean, if we could have any Fahrenheit 451 in existence, it may as well have been directed by Truffaut, apparently. We get this fantastic cinematographic sense, this phenomenal utilization of mid-20th century brutalist architecture, post-war, and there's so many fantastic images. Truffaut really knew how to extract the imagery of Bradbury's text, and that's important because there isn't much imagery itself in Bradbury's text. It's mainly about dialogues and internal monologues. We don't get a great description of the city and the technology, and to some extent in a very kind of gadget sort of way. We get, and fairly prophetic descriptions of technology, but the city itself there's certain vagaries in Bradbury which in this particular text and in Bradbury in general, in lieu of Fahrenheit 451's function as a fairy tale / allegorical fable. Fahrenheit 451 was written and eventually published in 1953. This is a time wherein the Red Scare was at its heights in the United States in the early 1950s. McCarthyism, House of Un-American Activities, the works. It seems there had been some recordings, some instances of book burning of communist or otherwise subversive literature in the United States during the 1950s. And Bradbury found this very concerning, as of course Nazi Germany and fascist states had been infamous for book burning. What I found brilliant about Fahrenheit 451, the novel, is that it's considered kind of the third in this 20th century trilogy of totalitarian novels. Obviously there's Huxley's Brave New World, Orwell's 1984. Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451 is possibly the third most prominent of this sort of 20th century. There's a number of these texts in the 20th century. There's obviously Yevgeny Zamyatin's We predates all of these and was published in the 20s in the Soviet Union, not published in the Soviet Union, I believe. I think it was a bit difficult to do that. There's also Dark at Noon by Kessler. I've not read that, actually. But what struck me about Bradbury's vision uniquely, obviously Orwell was imagining a United Kingdom that was becoming an increasingly socialized state, especially during and after the Second World War, and he was envisaging the United Kingdom becoming close to the Soviet Union as he sort of perceived it as it was. Aldous Huxley in the early 1930s speculated how this mass production, the revolution of the Fordist economy, which he seems to perceive the Bolshevik, the Soviet state of Russia to be kind of a extension of, in a sense. That materialistic, atheistic assembly line philosophy to industrial society, which Huxley was clearly quite terrified of in Brave New World, and he perceived this to be a cause for concern, and Brave New World published concurrent with the development of fascism in Western Europe. It's understandable how he perceived these certain governments would take control amidst the burgeoning technological booms. Huxley's vision was given his status as something of a cosmopolitan high society, something of an aristocrat, He had a very international, transatlantic view of these affairs. And Bradbury's is very American. Bradbury imagines what... The character of Beatty is so important within the novel of Fahrenheit 451. Beatty explains to Guy Montag how it's better to give a man only one side of a coin. Then he corrects himself. No, give him no sides of a coin. Beatty is indicative of the possibilities of wherein a kind of fascism can lay root in an American culture and kind of pathos. That's how it always came across to me. Bradbury's idea of an American fascism and how it expresses itself seems rooted not in a kind of love of the state or of ideology, but it kind of blends in with this kind of very casual, ignorance is bliss, just do your job, kind of, you know, oh, we don't take life that seriously, we're not the English, we're not the Europeans mentality, which I suspect some, or at least Bradbury, I felt was a bit alarming about a certain anti-intellectual attitudes in common Americans. I suppose it was easy to imagine a kind of wisecracking American expressing disdain, believing that spending time in a library was a waste of time. And I suppose Bradbury wants to draw a line between... I read a quote where Bradbury claims that he didn't believe the future of Fahrenheit 451 was necessarily a realistic future, although he wanted to speculate as to, I suppose, perhaps speculate on how you would get from that kind of casual anti or dismissal of intellectual culture and, you know, literary culture to a kind of, you know, explicitly anti-literature and authoritarian fascistic repression. Or at least how such ideological parties, such opportunistic parties, might take advantage of an underlying attitude imbued within an American lifestyle. But here's the thing, in lieu of Truffaut's adaptation, it doesn't come across as American. In this film, it comes across as kind of uncanny and British, closer to Huxley or Orwell than Bradbury. And aesthetically, you know, as I said earlier, Bradbury didn't describe his architecture much, and so Truffaut works with his own vision. Obviously, Bradbury describes a kind of monorail transport in the novel, though otherwise, Truffaut seems to compose something visually in his film. The art design seems closer to what one might imagine in an adaptation of Brave New World, frankly. It's phenomenally interesting art design all the same, don't get me wrong, although I do feel as though this facet of the novel was not adequately captured. Truffaut himself has expressed consternation about this film. He felt as though his understanding of English was so poor that the characters appeared too alien and disjointed when interacting with one another. Dare I say this assists the film's dystopian strange affect? I don't know. It seems to, well, at least it does. It seems to blend in with the tone and of the film's future. That's how I feel. His understanding of English may have led to this, but it may have helped the film in some respects, actually. Possibly. There are also quotes where he's complaining about how Warner Brothers were and all these issues with casting and wanting to kind of cuts to the film, I believe. So you can only imagine why Truffaut was jaded and a bit cynical, down during the making of this film, and he may have felt it affected the end result. Maybe he had a clearer vision in his head that he feels is compromised that we don't see because, you know, we can't read what's in his brain. Who knows? Maybe he felt as though Goddard's Alphaville was superior, which may or may not be the case. May very well be the case. But nevertheless, I'm very, very fond of Truffaut's Fahrenheit 451. I think he did a great job here. It's not the finest adaptation of Fahrenheit 451 we could imagine, although it may as well be. Do we need a great cinematic take on Fahrenheit 451? Who knows? An able director in Raman Bahrani, he directed Goodbye Solo from 2008, which I think is a very powerful film. He's more famous for Man Push Cart, which I wasn't that intrigued by, frankly, but Goodbye Solo I was quite fond of. And the Fahrenheit 451 he directed, I didn't finish it, so I'll reserve my full opinion on it, but I didn't finish it. You know, I felt like I had better things to do with my time. He had a talented cast there with Michael B. Jordan and Michael Shannon, but it was just a production that really couldn't justify its existence other than we may as well do a Fahrenheit 451 because it's a great novel. I agree, although they didn't have a clear enough vision of why it needed to be a film other than, hey, we may as well have a Fahrenheit 451 film. And it's like, yeah, it's not necessary. It is difficult to imagine, I will say, those who are simply science fiction film fans wholly appreciating Fahrenheit 451 as a vision in the same way they may Alphaville, for example. They might find Fahrenheit 451 a little bit, what the hell is this? A little bit like watching David Lynch's Dune without having read Frank Herbert's novel. And like David Lynch's Dune, it doesn't wholly succeed as an adaptation for diehard devotees of the novel either. So who is Truffaut's Fahrenheit 451 for? Probably not fans of the Nouvelle Vague or Truffaut's career. Who is it for? Well, me apparently. I really dig it. Let me know in the comments if you enjoyed this film also, or if you have disdain for it. I mean, if you are so inclined. In any case, I hope you are all as well as you have ever been, and I hope you have the best day you can possibly